"Can I sit here?" a sick little girl asked a stranger. He turned out to be a widowed CEO millionaire. The rain fell heavy that October afternoon, the kind that makes you want to disappear into corners and forget the world exists. Inside Morrison's coffee house on 5th and Main, the warmth battled against the cold pressing on the windows. James Mitchell sat alone at a corner table, his untouched cappuccino growing cold, his eyes fixed on nothing. He'd been sitting there for 40 minutes, not reading, not working, just existing in the space between heartbeats and memories. He didn't notice her at first, not until the small voice broke through the wall he'd built around himself. "Excuse me, mister?" James looked up. Standing beside his table was a little girl, no more than 4 years old, with curious brown eyes and 2 puffed ponytails decorated with pink butterfly clips. She wore a purple jacket that seemed too big for her tiny frame, and she was breathing just slightly harder than a child should. "Can I sit here?" she asked, pointing to the empty chair across from him. "All the other tables have people everywhere, and Mommy's in a long line, and I'm so tired." There was a slight wheeze under her words, barely noticeable, but was there. James blinked, caught off guard. He'd chosen this corner specifically to avoid people, to avoid questions, to avoid feeling anything at all. But something about her innocent smile, the way her small chest rose and fell with effort, stopped his automatic refusal. "I suppose," he managed, his voice rusty from disuse. The little girl beamed and climbed into the chair, her feet dangling high above the floor. She folded her small hands on the table, like she was conducting very important business. "I'm Maya," she announced. "I'm 4 3/4. That's almost 5. What's your name?" "James." "That's a good name, Mr. James," Maya nodded solemnly. Then she tilted her head, studying him with those wise beyond years eyes. "You look really, really sad. Did you lose something special?" And just like that, something cracked inside his chest. This tiny stranger with labored breasts and butterfly clips had asked the question no adult dared to. Not the polite "how are you?" but an honest acknowledgement that yes, he had lost something. Everything. Something like that. James whispered, his throat tight. Maya reached across the table and patted his hand with her small fingers, so gentle it almost broke him. "It's okay to be sad," she said softly. "Mommy says tears are just love with nowhere to go." In that moment, in a crowded coffee shop on a rainy afternoon, a grieving man and a sick little girl found each other. Neither knew it yet, but that simple question, "Can I sit here?" would change everything. James Mitchell wasn't supposed to be in that coffee shop. He wasn't supposed to be anywhere, really. For 2 years, 3 months, and 16 days, he'd been a ghost in his own life, moving through the motions of existence without truly living. The world knew him as the CEO of Mitchell Technologies, a software empire worth $800 million that he'd built from a college dorm room. Forbes had called him a visionary. Tech magazines featured him on covers. His company employed over 3,000 people across 12 countries. But none of them knew that every morning, James woke up reaching for a wife who would never be there again. Sarah had been his everything. They'd met at 23 in a cramped Seattle coffee shop, ironically enough, both reaching for the same book on entrepreneurship that someone had left behind. She had laughed. He had blushed. And within 6 months, they were married in a tiny ceremony with 12 people and more love than a cathedral could hold. Emma came 3 years later. 6 pounds. 7 ounces of pure miracle with Sarah's green eyes and his dark hair. She was the kind of child who asked questions about everything, who named the birds outside their window, who insisted on good night kisses for every stuffed animal in her room. 23 of them. James had counted. The accident happened on a Tuesday. Black ice on the interstate. A truck driver who fell asleep at the wheel. Sarah died on impact. Emma held on for 6 hours. Just long enough for James to whisper he loved her, that daddy was there, that everything would be okay. He'd lied. Nothing was okay. Nothing would ever be okay again. The company kept running because he'd hired brilliant people who could function without him. The board of directors suggested he'd take time off. He'd taken 6 months, spent most of it staring at walls in the mansion that Sarah had decorated, that Emma had filled with crayon drawings and laughter. When he finally returned to work, he was functional, professional, empty. He sold the mansion, bought a sterile downtown penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows and no memories. He threw himself into 18-hour workdays, acquisition deals, expansion plans, anything to keep his mind occupied, to fill the silence where his family used to be. But the nights were impossible. The silence in the penthouse screamed at him. So James started spending his evenings in coffee shops, different ones each night, sitting in corners where he could watch other people's lives unfold. Families, couples, friends, all the connections he no longer had. Morrison's coffee house on 5th and Main wasn't special. He'd simply walked until the rain got too heavy, ducked inside, ordered something he wouldn't drink. He'd been prepared for another evening of numb observation. He hadn't been prepared for Maya. Now, sitting across from this tiny girl with butterfly clips and labored breathing, James felt something he hadn't felt in 2 years. A spark, not of joy exactly, but of presence, of being seen by someone who didn't know he was supposed to be important, who didn't offer practice condolences or awkward sympathy. Maya was telling him about her stuffed elephant, Peanut, who was apparently very brave but afraid of thunder. Her words came in short bursts, pausing to breathe more deeply than a 4-year-old should need to. But her enthusiasm never wavered. Mommy says Peanut can be brave and scared at the same time, Maya explained, her small hands gesturing. Like how I'm scared of doctors, but brave because I go anyway. Before James could respond, a woman's voice cut through the coffee shop noise. Maya, baby, I told you to stay by the counter. James looked up as a woman hurried toward their table, and time seemed to slow. She was beautiful in that exhausted way that spoke of too many sleepless nights and not enough hours in the day. Her scrubs were visible under her unbuttoned coat, her natural hair pulled back in a hasty bun, her eyes carrying the weight of 1,000 worries. Nicole Thompson looked at the stranger her daughter was chatting with, and her first instinct was fear. Protective, primal mother fear. I'm so sorry, Nicole said quickly, reaching for Maya's hand. Maya, honey, you can't just bother people like that. He's not bothered, Mommy, Maya protested. Mr. James said I could sit. He looks sad, and I'm keeping him company. Nicole's eyes met James's for the first time, really met them, and something passed between them, a recognition. The kind that happens when one broken thing sees another. It's all right, James said softly. She wasn't bothering me. Nicole hesitated, her nurse's training making her assess the man in the expensive suit with the kind eyes and the untouched coffee. She saw the shadows under his eyes, the slight tremor in his hands, the way he held himself like someone barely keeping it together. She knew that posture. She wore it herself every single day. Still, Nicole managed a tired smile. We should get out of your hair. Come on, Maya Bear. Our order's ready. Maya's face fell, but I didn't finish telling Mr. James about Peanut. Nicole's heart clenched. Her daughter made friends so easily, loved so freely, despite everything she'd been through, despite the hospitals, the tests, the pain, despite her father walking away when she needed him most. Maybe another time, baby, Nicole said gently, lifting Maya from the chair. As Nicole turned to leave, Maya wheezed slightly, that telltale sound that made Nicole's stomach drop every single time. She adjusted Maya on her hip, grabbed their order with her free hand, and headed for the door. James watched them go, something pulling tight in his chest. The way the mother held the child, protective and fierce. The way the little girl's head rested on her mother's shoulder, trusting and safe. He and Sarah used to hold Emma like that. The coffee shop felt colder after they left. James sat there for another hour, long after his coffee had gone completely cold, thinking about butterfly clips and labored breathing and tears being loved with nowhere to go. Across town, in a cramped one-bedroom apartment that shook every time a factory next door rumbled to life, Nicole was living a different kind of impossible. The apartment cost $900 a month, which was all Nicole could afford on a nurse's salary at County General. She worked 3 12-hour shifts a week, then cleaned office buildings for evenings a week after Maya went to sleep. Her neighbor, Mrs. Chun, watched Maya for almost nothing, bless her heart, but Nicole still barely scraped by. The medical bills were drowning her. Maya had been sick since birth. The wheezing, the breathing problems, the constant respiratory infections. Nicole had taken her to 7 different doctors. The diagnosis was always the same: congenital heart defect, possible surgery needed, more tests required, thousands of dollars she didn't have. Marcus had lasted 5 months. 5 months of midnight emergency room visits, of Maya's cries, of bills piling up. Nicole came home one day to find a note on the kitchen counter. "I can't do this. She's too sick. This is what I signed up for. I'm sorry." No forwarding address. No child support. No explanation beyond a coward's confession that his daughter was too much trouble, too much burden, too much everything. Nicole had cried for exactly 1 hour. Then she'd picked up her baby girl, kissed her forehead, and made a promise. Maya would never know a single day without love. Never question whether she was wanted. Never feel like a burden. It had been 4 years and 4 months of keeping that promise. For years of working herself to exhaustion. For years of watching her daughter struggle to breathe and not being able to fix it. For years of telling herself that love would be enough, even when the bills said otherwise. Tonight, Maya was already asleep in her shared bed, Peanut the elephant tucked under her arm. Nicole sat at the kitchen table with a calculator and a stack of bills that made her want to scream. Hospital, $3,400. Specialist consultation, $850. Medications, $212. Rent due in 5 days, $900. Current bank balance, $437.62. The numbers didn't work. They never worked. Nicole had gotten good at deciding which bills to pay partially, which to skip entirely, which companies would give her another month before sending to collections. She was 34 years old, had a nursing degree, worked 70 hours a week, and still couldn't keep her head above water. But Maya had smiled today, had made a friend in a coffee shop, had been happy, even with her labored breathing and too big jacket, and the wheeze that never quite went away. That had to count for something. Nicole pulled out her phone and set her alarm for 5 a.m. Another shift started in 6 hours. She'd sleep for 4 of them, wake up, get Maya ready for Mrs. Chen's, put on her scrubs, and do it all over again. This was her life. This was love with nowhere to go except into the fears. Desperate hope that somehow, some way, everything would work out. She had no idea that across town, a grieving CEO was lying awake in his sterile penthouse, thinking about a little girl with butterfly clips who'd asked if she could sit down. She had no idea that their lives had just intersected in a way that would change everything. Sometimes the most important moments don't announce themselves. They slip in quietly, disguised as ordinary afternoons and simple questions and rain-soaked October evenings. Sometimes healing begins with a stranger's kindness and a child's wisdom. Sometimes broken souls find each other exactly when they've stopped looking. The rain continued to fall outside, both their windows. In the space between heartbeats and hope, two separate lives were beginning to spiral toward each other, pulled by something neither of them understood yet. Fate, maybe, or grace. Or perhaps just the universe's way of saying that even in the deepest darkness, light finds a way through. James didn't go back to Morrison's coffee house the next day. He told himself it would be weird, that he had no reason to return to that specific coffee shop when the city had hundreds of others. But he couldn't stop thinking about her. Not in any inappropriate way. Nothing like that. It was the wheeze in Maya's breathing that haunted him. The way her small chest worked harder than it should just to pull in air. The exhaustion he'd seen in her mother's eyes. The kind of bone-deep weariness that came from fighting battles no one else could see. At his desk on the 42nd floor of Mitchell Technologies headquarters, James found himself distracted during board meetings. His CFO presented quarterly earnings, profit margins climbing 17%, and all James could think about was a 4-year-old girl who got tired from standing in line. His assistant, Margaret, noticed. "Mr. Mitchell, are you all right?" she asked after the meeting. Her 60-year-old face creased with concern. She'd worked for him for 12 years, had been at both Sarah's and Emma's funerals, had seen him at his absolute worst. "I'm fine," James said automatically. "You're thinking about something," Margaret observed. "You haven't been this present in 2 years. What changed?" James looked at her, this woman who knew him better than most. "I met someone, a child. She was sick." Margaret's expression softened. "And it reminded you of Emma?" "Yes." "No. I don't know." James ran his hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration he rarely allowed himself. She asked if she could sit with me. Such a simple question. And I realize I haven't had a real conversation with anyone in so long. "Then maybe you should have another one," Margaret said gently. The next afternoon, James found himself walking down 5th and Main. He told himself he was just taking a different route back to the penthouse, that it meant nothing that he pushed open the door to Morrison's coffee house at exactly 4:30. The same time he'd been there before. The corner table was empty. He ordered the same cappuccino, sat in the same chair, and waited. They didn't come. James sat there for 2 hours, feeling foolish. What had he expected? That this woman and her daughter made a habit of coming to this exact coffee shop at the same time every day? They probably lived across town. Probably had a dozen other places they preferred. He left as the sun set, telling himself it was for the best. He had no business inserting himself into their lives. He was a stranger, a broken one at that. But the next day, he came back anyway. This time, he brought his laptop, made it look purposeful, answered emails, reviewed contracts, glanced at the door every 30 seconds like a teenager waiting for a crush. 4:45. No sign of them. 5 o'clock. Nothing. 5:15. James was packing up his laptop, accepting defeat when the door chimed. And there she was. Maya came through the door holding her mother's hand, wearing a yellow raincoat this time, those same butterfly clips in her hair. Her face lit up the moment she saw him. "Mr. James." She pulled away from Nicole and rushed to his table, her breathing already labored from the excitement. "You came back." Mommy, it's my friend." Nicole followed more slowly, surprise evident on her face. She was in scrubs again, her coat spotted with rain, her expression a mixture of pleasure and wariness. "Hello again," James said, standing awkwardly. I work nearby. This is convenient." It was a terrible lie, and Nicole's raised eyebrows suggested she knew it. But Maya was already climbing into the chair across from him, and something in Nicole's tired face softened. "Maya's been talking about you all week," Nicole admitted, setting down her purse. "Apparently you're very good at listening to stories about stuffed elephants." I have some experience with stuffed animal narratives, James said, and the ghost of Emma's 23 bedtime companions flickered through his mind. My daughter had quite a collection. He'd said had, not has, and Nicole caught it. Her eyes met his with sudden understanding. I'm so sorry, she said quietly. It was 2 years ago. James cleared his throat. I'm James, by the way. James Mitchell. Nicole Thompson. And you've already met the social butterfly. Nicole smiled at her daughter, who was already pulling coloring pages from her backpack. Can Mr. James color with us, Mommy? Please. Nicole hesitated, clearly torn between her daughter's happiness and the strangeness of the situation. But there was something about this man, something gentle and sad and safe. If Mr. Mitchell doesn't mind, she said finally. I don't mind at all. They colored. It was absurd, really. A CEO worth hundreds of millions of dollars, sitting in a coffee shop with crayons and a coloring book featuring cartoon princesses. But James found himself relaxing for the first time in years. Maya chattered constantly between breaths, telling him about preschool, about her best friend Zoe who had a real puppy, about how she wanted to be a doctor when she grew up so she could help other kids who couldn't breathe good. Breathe well, Nicole corrected gently, though her voice caught on the words. James noticed everything. The way Nicole watched Maya constantly, assessing every breath. The inhaler in Nicole's purse, positioned for a quick access. The way Maya would pause mid-sentence to catch her breath. So practiced at it she barely seemed to notice. Maya has asthma? James asked quietly when Maya got distracted by her coloring. Nicole's expression clouded. The doctors think it's a heart condition, congenital defect. We're doing tests. That must be expensive. Nicole stiffened slightly. We manage. James recognized the pride in her voice. The defensive wall going up. He knew that wall. He'd built plenty of his own. I didn't mean to pry, he said softly. I remember what it's like. The medical bills, the uncertainty. My daughter was in the hospital for 6 hours before she passed. I remember the insurance battles, the costs, even with good coverage. It was overwhelming. Nicole's shoulders dropped slightly. I'm sorry. People hear single mother with a sick kid and they either judge or they pity, and I can't handle either one right now. I'm not doing either, James promised. It's nice, sitting here, coloring, feeling almost normal. Nicole studied him, this mysterious man in the expensive suit with the sad eyes who kept showing up. Why are you really here, James? He could have lied, should have lied, but Maya laughed at something in her coloring book, and a sound cracked something open in his chest. Because your daughter asked if she could sit with me, James said honestly, and for the first time in 2 years, I didn't want to be alone. The truth hung between them, vulnerable and raw. Nicole nodded slowly. Okay, but I buy my own coffee. Deal. They stayed for an hour. Nicole ordered a coffee she actually could afford. Maya got a cookie, and James found himself talking more than he had in months. About his company, in vague terms. About Seattle, where he'd grown up. About anything except the enormous grief that still lived in his chest. Nicole talked about nursing, about the chaos of ER, about Mrs. Chun who watched Maya and made the best dumplings in the city. She had mentioned Marcus, and James didn't ask. When Maya started to fade, her breathing getting heavy with exhaustion, Nicole packed up their things. Same time next week? Maya asked hopefully, looking at James with those huge brown eyes. James glanced at Nicole, who gave the smallest nod. Same time next week, he confirmed. After they left, James sat in the coffee shop for another 30 minutes, thinking. Maya's breathing bothered him in a way he couldn't shake. He'd noticed something during their hour together. The wheeze got worse when the factory next door released steam, that loud hissing sound that rattled the coffee shop windows. James pulled out his phone and typed a quick email to his head of environmental compliance. Need a favor. Discreet inquiry into industrial facilities in the 5th Street corridor, specifically looking at air quality compliance and emissions records. Flag anything questionable. Don't ask why. Just send me the report by Friday. He hit send before he could second-guess himself. The 3rd coffee shop meeting happened 4 days later. This time, James brought a small gift, a stuffed animal, a soft gray elephant that he'd seen in a toy store window and couldn't resist. Maya's face when he gave it to her was worth everything. "For Peanut's brother," she exclaimed, hugging it to her chest despite the effort it took to breathe deeply enough to squeal. Thank you, Mr. James." Nicole's eyes glistened. "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to," James said simply. They fell into an easy rhythm, coloring, talking, existing together in the small pocket of peace they created. Nicole slowly opened up about the medical bills, not asking for help, but needing to voice the fear as someone who wouldn't judge. "They want to do another echocardiogram," she said, quietly while Maya colored. $1,500. Insurance covers 60%. The rest is on me. When? Next month. I'm picking up extra shifts. James wanted to offer money, wanted to write a check and solve it immediately, but he could see Nicole's pride, her fierce independence. So he just listened. "The hardest part is not knowing," Nicole continued. 4 years of tests and specialists, and no one can figure out why she struggles so much. They say heart defect, but the scans are inconclusive. They say asthma, but the medications barely help. "I just want answers. I just want my baby to breathe easy." Her voice broke on the last word, and James did something he hadn't done in 2 years. He reached across the table and took her hand. "You're an amazing mother," he said firmly. "Maya is lucky to have you." Nicole laughed, but it was watery. "I'm working 2 jobs and can barely afford rent. Some amazing mother. You show up every day. You love her fiercely. You fight for her. That's everything." Their eyes met and something shifted. Not romantic. Not yet, but a recognition. 2 people who understood loss, who understood fighting impossible battles, who understood that love sometimes meant simply surviving one more day. Maya looked up from her coloring. "Mommy, why are you crying?" "Happy tears, baby," Nicole said, wiping her eyes. "Sometimes people are just so kind it makes you cry." James thought about that later, alone in his penthouse with the environmental report his team had sent over. The factory near Nicole's apartment was violating at least 6 EPA regulations. Emissions far beyond legal limits. Chemicals that could absolutely cause respiratory distress, especially in children. Maya didn't have a heart defect. She was being poisoned. James stared at the report, his hands shaking. He thought about Emma, about how he'd been powerless to save her, about how medical science and money and desperation couldn't stop black ice and a sleeping truck driver. But this he could do something about. The question was how to help without overstepping. How to fix this without making Nicole feel like charity. How to be part of the solution without becoming another man who thought he knew better than she did. For the first time in 2 years, 3 months, and 28 days, James Mitchell had a purpose beyond surviving. He had someone to protect. 2 someones, actually. He just had to figure out how to do it right. Sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones that remind us we're not alone in our struggles. That connection can heal even the deepest wounds. If this story is touching your heart, you're not the only one feeling it. Thousands of others are right here with you, finding hope in these moments of human kindness. James looked at his reflection in the window, at the lights of the city below, and made a decision. He was going to save this little girl. Not because he could save his own daughter, but because maybe, just maybe, this was his chance to turn his grief into something beautiful. His love finally had somewhere to go. James spent the next 3 days building a case that would hold up in court, in the media, and most importantly, in the face of Nicole's inevitable resistance. The factory was called Meridian Chemical Processing, a mid-size operation that manufactured industrial solvents. On paper, they appeared compliant, but James's environmental team had dug deeper, pulling air quality samples from independent sources, cross-referencing hospital admission rates in the surrounding neighborhood, tracking emission patterns against wind direction data. The results were damning. Meridian was releasing benzene, toluene, and formaldehyde at levels 3 times the legal limit. The emissions spiked every evening between 6 and 9 p.m., precisely when residential areas were most populated, when families were home, when children were sleeping in apartments with windows that didn't quite seal against the poison air. The respiratory illness rates within a 4-block radius were 67% higher than the city average. Asthma diagnoses among children under 10 had tripled in the past 5 years, and Maya's apartment sat exactly 200 yards downwind from the main exhaust vents. James looked at the medical correlation data and felt rage, the first clean emotion he'd experienced since the accident. This wasn't fate or bad luck or God's mysterious plan. This was corporate negligence slowly killing a little girl, and probably dozens of other children whose mothers were too exhausted to connect the dots. He could shut the factory down. His lawyers were already drafting an EPA complaint. His PR team could have it on every news channel by Monday. Mitchell Technologies had enough political capital to force an immediate investigation. But doing it that way would expose Nicole, make her and Maya the face of the story, put them through media scrutiny and public attention they didn't ask for. James needed to tell her first, give her the choice, respect her agency even as he ached to simply fix everything. He planned to tell her at their next coffee shop meeting, had rehearsed the words a dozen times, but life, as it tends to do, had other plans. The call came on a Thursday night. James was working late, reviewing acquisition proposals he didn't care about, when his personal phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. Hello, Mr. James? The voice was small, scared, and definitely not an adult. His heart stopped. Maya, Mommy's phone was in her purse, and I know her passcode because it's my birthday and you're in her favorites, even though she said she was just putting you there for emergency. But I think she likes you, and Mr. James, I can't breathe good. Mommy's trying to help, but we're in the ambulance, and I'm scared, and I wanted to hear your voice. The words came in gasps, each one a fight. James was already grabbing his coat, his keys. Maya, sweetheart, which hospital? County General. That's where Mommy works. Mr. James, it hurts. I know, baby. I know. You're being so brave. Is your mommy there? She's crying. She doesn't think I see, but she's crying and talking to the ambulance man. Maya, I need you to give the phone to your mommy, okay? Rustling sounds, Maya's labored breathing. Then Nicole's voice, sharp with panic and anger. Who is this? Maya, how did you, James? I'm on my way, he said, already in the elevator. County General? You don't need to, we're fine. This isn't your problem. Nicole. Something in his voice stopped her protests. Maybe it was the raw fear or the absolute certainty or the way he said her name like a prayer and a promise combined. County General, she whispered. Emergency entrance. James drove faster than he should have, his hands gripping the wheel like it was the only thing keeping him tethered to earth. He'd made this drive before, 2 years ago, racing to a different hospital where his family lay dying. The memories threatened to drown him, but this was different. Maya was still alive, still fighting, and this time he had information that could actually help. County General's emergency room was chaos, as emergency rooms always are. James pushed through to the desk, demanded to know about Maya Thompson, used his name and his tone, and probably his privilege to get answers that others might have waited hours for. Room 7. Acute respiratory distress. Mother with her. Critical but stable. He found them behind a curtain in the ER bay. Maya was on oxygen, her small face covered by a mask that seemed enormous against her features. Monitors beeped, and 4 ran into her tiny arm. Her eyes were closed, her chest rising and falling with mechanical assistance. Nicole sat beside the bed, holding Maya's hand, her scrubs from work still on, her face a portrait of every parent's worst nightmare. She looked up when James entered, and something in her expression crumbled. She collapsed at home. Nicole said, her voice hollow, just couldn't catch her breath. I've seen this before. I'm a nurse. I should have known it was getting worse. James moved to her side without thinking, without permission, and pulled her into his arms. Nicole resisted for exactly 2 seconds before she broke, sobbing against his chest with the kind of grief that comes from being strong for too long. I can't lose her, Nicole gasped. I can't. She's everything. She's my whole world. And I don't know what's wrong, and the doctors keep saying heart condition, but nothing helps, and I'm so tired of being scared. James held her, this fierce woman who'd been fighting alone for so long, and made a decision. I know what's wrong, he said quietly. Nicole pulled back, staring at him. What? Not here. Can we step outside for a moment? Maya's stable. She's on oxygen, and I need to show you something. Nicole looked at her daughter, at the nurses monitoring nearby, and nodded slowly. They stepped into the hallway, harsh fluorescent lights making everything feel too real, too sharp. James pulled out his phone, opened the environmental report, and handed it to Nicole. She read in silence, her expression shifting from confusion to horror to rage. The factory, she whispered. It's the factory. All this time, they told me she had a heart defect, that something was wrong with her, and it's poison? Someone's been poisoning my daughter. The emissions correlate exactly with her symptoms, James said gently. The evening spikes in her breathing problems. The way she improves slightly when she's away from home for a few days. Nicole, Maya doesn't have a heart condition. She has chemical exposure. Nicole's hands shook as she scrolled through the data. For years of medical bills and specialist appointments, and guilt that maybe she'd done something wrong during pregnancy. For years of Marcus telling her the baby was defective before he left. For years of blaming herself. And it was a factory, a corporation cutting corners to save money while children choked on poison air. I'm going to shut them down, James said. My lawyers are ready. We can file EPA complaints, force inspections, get media coverage. But I want to tell you first, give you the choice of how to handle this. Nicole looked at him, really looked at him. Why? Why do you care so much? You barely know us. James thought about Emma, about Sarah, about all the love he'd had nowhere to put for 2 years, about how Maya had asked if she could sit down and accidentally given him a reason to keep living. I couldn't save my daughter, he said, his voice breaking. I had all the money in the world, the best doctors, everything, and I couldn't save her. But Maya, I can help Maya. This is fixable, Nicole. The factory can be shut down. You can move to clean air. Maya can heal. Let me help. Please. I don't want charity, Nicole said, but her voice lacked conviction. It's not charity. It's rage. It's justice. It's refusing to let another child suffer when I have the power to stop it. James ran his hand through his hair, that gesture of frustration and vulnerability. I've spent 2 years being useless, letting my company run itself. avoiding life because living hurt too much. And then your daughter asked if she could sit with me. And for the first time, I felt like maybe I could do something that mattered. Nicole's eyes filled with tears. I've been so alone. I know. Marcus left because he said she was too much trouble, too expensive, too sick. He made me believe that maybe he was right, that maybe I couldn't handle this. You've been handling it, James said firmly. You've been handling it alone while working 2 jobs and keeping your daughter alive and loved. You're the strongest person I've ever met. But strong people are allowed to accept help. What kind of help? First, we get Maya out of that apartment. Tonight, if possible. I have resources, connections. We find you a place with clean air, far from the factory. Then we shut Meridian down, so no other children get sick. Then we just see what happens. Nicole looked to the window at her daughter, small and fragile under the oxygen mask. The decision should have been hard. Pride should have made it complicated, but love made it simple. Okay, she whispered. Help us. James felt something shift in his chest, like ice cracking after a long winter. Okay. They stood in the hospital hallway. 2 broken people who'd found each other by accident, who'd been brought together by a little girl's innocent question and a cup of cold coffee. Inside the ER bay, Maya's monitors beeped steadily. The oxygen flowed. Her small chest rose and fell, fighting for every breath and air that had been slowly killing her. But that was about to change. James made calls that night from the hospital waiting room. His real estate team found a furnished apartment across town, upwind from all industrial zones, available immediately. His lawyers filed emergency EPA complaints with injunctions for immediate factory shutdown. His PR team prepared statements for the media. His assistant arranged movers for the next morning. Money couldn't save Emma, but money could absolutely save Maya. Nicole sat with her daughter through the night, watching her breathe easier with each hour of clean, filtered hospital air. Maya woke up once, around 3 a.m., and smiled when she saw her mother. Is Mr. James still here? She asked, her voice muffled by the oxygen mask. He's in the waiting room, baby. He came when I was scared. Yes, he did. I like him, Mommy. He's nice. And he's not sad anymore when he looks at us. Nicole's breath caught, out of the mouths of babes, wisdom that adults spent years trying to understand. No, baby, I don't think he's as sad anymore. Good. Maya yawned. Everybody should be happy. Being sad is too hard. She drifted back to sleep, and Nicole sat in the dim hospital room, thinking about the man in the waiting room who'd shown up when they needed him, who'd done the research she was too exhausted to do, who'd found answers when she'd run out of strength to look, who'd lost everything and still had enough heart left to care about a stranger's child. Maybe Marcus leaving had been a gift. Maybe Maya's illness, horrible as it was, had led them exactly where they needed to be. Maybe sometimes the worst things lead to the best things, if you're brave enough to let them. Nicole looked at her daughter, breathing steadily now, and whispered a prayer of gratitude to whatever force had sent James Mitchell to that coffee shop on that rainy October afternoon. She didn't know it yet, but she was already falling in love. Sometimes truth breaks everything open. Sometimes it hurts more before it heals. But truth, real truth, is always the first step toward freedom. And in a hospital room at County General, freedom was just beginning to breathe. The new apartment sat on the 8th floor of a renovated building in the Riverside district, far from factories and industrial zones and poison air. Large windows let in actual sunlight. The air smelled clean, like possibility instead of chemicals. Nicole stood in the living room on that first morning, still in disbelief. The movers had brought their few belongings the night before while Maya was still in the hospital. Everything they owned fit into 8 boxes and looked lost in the spacious 2-bedroom apartment. "This is too much," she told James for the 100th time. "It's a 6-month lease already paid." He'd responded calmly. "Consider it medical treatment. Clean air is medicine." He had a way of framing his help that made it harder to refuse. Not charity, not rescue, just practical problem solving that happened to come with luxury fixtures and a doorman. Maya came home from the hospital on a Tuesday. The doctors had wanted to keep her for observation, but her numbers had improved so dramatically with clean air and rest that they cleared her for discharge with strict follow-up instructions. James drove them home, his luxury sedan a far cry from Nicole's 15-year-old sedan that barely started on cold mornings. Maya sat in the back seat, still on oxygen but already brighter, chattering about the new apartment she'd only seen in pictures. "Does it really have 2 bedrooms, Mommy?" "My own room." Nicole's throat tightened. Maya had never had her own room. They'd always shared the cramped bedroom in the old apartment. Maya's toddler bed pushed against the wall beside Nicole's mattress on the floor. "Your own room, baby," Nicole confirmed, "with a real bed and everything." "Did you hear that, Mr. James? My own room." James caught Nicole's eye in the rearview mirror, and the understanding that passed between them needed no words. He knew what it meant, that a child's own room was a luxury Nicole had never been able to provide. He knew the shame and the gratitude warring in her expression. He knew, because he'd felt it too, the complicated emotions of accepting help when pride said you should manage alone. When they arrived at the apartment, Maya's reaction was everything. She stood in the doorway of her new bedroom, staring at the twin bed with the purple comforter, the bookshelf already loaded with new books, the toy chest in the corner. "Is this really mine?" she whispered. "Really yours," James said gently. Maya turned and hugged his legs, the oxygen tube trailing behind her. "Thank you, Mr. James. You're like a fairy godfather." Nicole laughed despite the tears in her eyes. "I think you mean godfather, baby." "No, fairy godfather, because he does magic things." James crouched down to Maya's level, and Nicole saw his eyes were suspiciously bright. "You're very welcome, sweetheart. Now, I think Peanut and his brother need to see their new home, don't you?" Maya rushed off to unpack her stuffed elephants, leaving James and Nicole alone in the hallway. "I don't know how to thank you," Nicole said quietly. "You don't have to. Just let her get better. Let yourself breathe for once." "Why are you doing this? Really?" James was quiet for a long moment, looking at the space where Maya had disappeared into her room. "Because I couldn't save my daughter, but I can save yours. And maybe that's enough to make the grief mean something." Nicole stepped closer, close enough to see the pain still etched in the lines around his eyes. "Your daughter would be proud of you." "I hope so," James whispered. The first week in the new apartment was transformative. Maya's breathing improved so dramatically that the doctors reduced her oxygen dependency within 72 hours. By day 5, she was off supplemental oxygen entirely for the first time in 4 years. Nicole watched her daughter actually run across the living room without stopping to gasp for air, and she cried. Just sat on the couch and sobbed with relief and rage and joy all mixed together. James had been there when it happened. He'd started coming by every evening after work, always with some excuse. Dropping off groceries, checking on the apartment, bringing Maya a new book. But really, he came because he couldn't stay away. He sat beside Nicole on the couch as she cried. Didn't try to fix it or minimize it. Just sat with her in the grief and the joy and the overwhelming relief of watching a child breathe easy. "For years," Nicole said through her tears, "for years I thought something was wrong with her, that I'd done something wrong, that maybe Marcus was right and she was just defective." "She was never defective," James said firmly. "She was being poisoned, and now she's not. Look at her, Nicole. Look at your daughter." Maya was twirling in circles, arms spread wide, giggling without the wheeze that had underlaid every laugh for her entire life. "She's perfect," Nicole whispered. "She gets it from her mother." The words hung between them, weighted with meaning neither was quite ready to acknowledge. The factory shutdown made headlines 3 days later. Meridian Chemical Processing was closed by emergency EPA order, facing over $2 million in fines and criminal negligence charges. The story ran on every local news channel, complete with testimonials from other families in the neighborhood whose children had suffered mysterious respiratory illnesses. James made sure Nicole and Maya's names were kept out of coverage. He used his influence to redirect media attention to the corporate malfeasance, to the regulatory failures, to the systemic issues. The story became about accountability, not about one family's suffering. Nicole watched the news coverage from the safety of her clean apartment and felt something shift inside her. Justice. Not complete, maybe. Not enough to erase the 4 years of fear and medical debt, but enough to matter. "Thank you," she told James that evening. He brought dinner again, claiming he'd ordered too much for himself. Another transparent excuse neither of them called out. "You've thanked me enough," James said, setting containers of Thai food on the counter. "I don't think I have." Nicole moved closer, and the air between them changed, charged with something neither had expected when a little girl asked if she could sit down. "You gave us our lives back. You were already fighting for your lives. I leveled the playing field. Stop minimizing what you did." Nicole's voice was fierce. "You saved my daughter. You, a stranger who had every reason to stay locked in his own grief. You chose to save my daughter. Maya saved me first." James said quietly, "She asked if she could sit with me, and I realized I'd forgotten what it felt like to be needed, to have purpose, to care about something beyond just surviving the next day." They stood in the kitchen, close enough to touch, both aware of the boundary they were approaching. Maya was in her room, playing with her elephants, safe and breathing easy. The apartment was warm. Dinner was getting cold, and two broken people were slowly, carefully, considering whether their jagged edges might fit together. "I'm scared," Nicole admitted. Marcus left. He saw Maya's illness, and he ran. What if this is just, I don't know, some kind of rescue complex? What if when the crisis is over, you realize we're just another obligation? James reached out and cupped her face gently. "I've had 2 years to understand the difference between obligation and choice. Obligation is running my company because 3,000 people depend on those paychecks. Choice is coming here every night because seeing you smile is the best part of my day." James. "I'm scared too," he continued. "I loved Sarah and Emma with everything I had, and losing them nearly destroyed me. The idea of loving again, of risking that kind of pain, it terrifies me. But you know what terrifies me more? Missing this. Missing you. Missing the chance to be part of Maya's life. Missing the possibility that maybe I get to be happy again." Nicole's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know how to do this. I've been alone for so long." "Me too. So maybe we figure out together." He kissed her then, soft and tentative and full of all the fear and hope that comes with second chances. Nicole kissed him back, tasting salt from tears she didn't know she was crying, feeling something in her chest unlock after years of being closed. When they pulled apart, Maya was standing in the doorway, grinning. "I knew it," she exclaimed. "I told Peanut you liked each other." Nicole laughed, embarrassed. "Maya, go play. Are you going to be my daddy now, Mr. James?" The question was so innocent, so hopeful, so completely unaware of the weight it carried. James looked at this little girl who'd accidentally saved his life and felt his heart crack open in the best possible way. "Would you like that?" he asked carefully. "Uh-huh. Daddies are nice." Zoe has a daddy, and he does tea parties and pushes her on swings and reads bedtime stories. Would you do those things? Maya, we're not, Nicole started, but James touched her hand. I would love to do those things, he told Maya, if your mommy says it's okay. Maya looked at her mother expectantly. Nicole looked at James, at this man who'd appeared in their lives like an answer to prayers she'd been too tired to say, who'd saved her daughter, who'd given them clean air and hope and the possibility of something she thought was impossible. Okay, Nicole whispered. Maya cheered and ran back to her room to tell Peanut the news, leaving James and Nicole alone again. We're really doing this? Nicole asked, if you want to, no pressure. We can go as slow as you need. I've been surviving on my own for 4 years. Going slow sounds. Actually, it sounds perfect. Over the following weeks, they built something beautiful. James came for dinner every night, sometimes bringing groceries, sometimes cooking, always bringing his quiet presence and genuine care. He read Maya bedtime stories, all 23 of them now, because she requested a stuffed animal collection, like he'd told her his Emma had. He and Nicole talked for hours after Maya fell asleep, sharing their histories, their fears, their dreams. Nicole told him about nursing school, about her parents who'd passed before Maya was born, about the loneliness of being abandoned by someone who was supposed to love you. James told her about building his company from nothing, about Sarah's laugh, about Emma's questions, about the guilt of surviving when they didn't. I went to their graves last week, James said one evening, his voice soft. I hadn't been since the funeral. Couldn't face it. But I went and I told them about you, about Maya. Nicole's breath caught. What did you say? I asked permission, James admitted. I know it sounds crazy. They're gone. But I needed to tell them that I met someone, that I'm falling in love again, that it doesn't mean I love them less. And I think they'd be happy. Sarah would have loved you. She was fierce like you are, protective, strong. And Emma, she would have adored Maya. They would have been friends. Nicole took his hand. I wish I could have met them. Me too. But I think maybe they sent you to me. Maybe this was always meant to happen. 3 months after Maya came home from the hospital, they celebrated her 5th birthday. The party was small, just Mrs. Chun, a few friends from Maya's preschool, and James. But it was filled with laughter and cake, and a little girl who could blow out her candles without stopping to catch her breath. James gave her a necklace, a delicate silver chain with a small elephant pendant. So Peanut is always with you, he explained. Maya hugged him so tight, whispering, I love you, Mr. James. And James, this man who thought he'd never feel joy again, whispered back, I love you too, sweetheart. That night, after the guests left and Maya was asleep, James and Nicole sat on the couch, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. I want you to know something, James said quietly. This isn't about replacing what I lost. Emma will always be my daughter. Sarah will always be my first love. But hearts are infinite. They expand. There's room for all of it, the grief and the new love and the hope for the future. I know, Nicole said. Marcus will always be Maya's biological father, even though he abandoned us. But biology doesn't make a parent. Showing up does. Loving does. You've been more of a father to her in 3 months than he ever was. I want to make this official, James said, not rushing you, but I want you to know my intentions. I want to marry you, Nicole. I want to adopt Maya. I want us to be a family, legally, permanently, when you're ready. Nicole sat up, looking at him with tears in her eyes. Are you sure? Really sure? Because if you do this, if you commit to us, Maya will expect you to stay. I can't let her be abandoned again. I'm not going anywhere, James promised. I've spent 2 years wishing I could have died with my family. But Maya asked if she could sit with me, and you trusted me with your story, and I realized I don't want to die anymore. I want to live. With you. With her. For however many years we get. Then yes, Nicole whispered. When we're ready. Yes. They kissed in the lamplight of the apartment James had provided. In the space where clean air had given them all a second chance at life, at love, at family. Stories like these restore our faith in humanity, don't they? They remind us that even in our darkest moments, connection is possible, healing is possible, and sharing these moments helps others find hope too. Where are you watching from tonight? Drop your location in the comments. We'd love to know. Outside, the city continued its endless rhythm. Inside, 3 people who'd found each other against all odds were becoming something neither grief nor abandonment could destroy. They were becoming whole. As we reach the most beautiful part of this journey, know that you're part keeping these stories alive. Your presence here, sharing these moments of hope and healing, that matters more than you know. 6 months can feel like a lifetime when you're healing. 6 months can feel like a heartbeat when you're falling in love. For James, Nicole, and Maya, it was both. The medical bills that had haunted Nicole for 4 years were settled quietly. James had his attorneys negotiate with the hospitals, the collection agencies, the specialists. He called it environmental restitution. Funds from the lawsuit against Meridian Chemical Processing. Nicole knew better. But she learned that sometimes accepting help was the bravest thing you could do. Her credit score slowly climbed. The collection calls stopped. She could breathe, actually breathe for the first time in years. Maya thrived in ways that seemed almost miraculous to anyone who'd known her before. The little girl who'd struggled to walk across a room without stopping could now run, dance, play for hours without the wheeze that had defined her entire existence. Her pediatrician cried at the 6-month checkup, openly wept at the transformation. I've never seen anything like this, Dr. Sanders said, reviewing Maya's lung function tests. It's like she's a completely different child. She is, Nicole said, watching Maya play in the corner of the exam room. We all are. James had moved slowly, carefully, respecting Nicole's need for caution. But slowly wasn't the same as uncertainly. Every action spoke of permanence, of commitment, of a man building a foundation for forever. He'd introduced them to his board of directors at company charity gala. My family, he called them simply, and the way Nicole's hand tightened his told him everything about what those words meant. He'd brought them to Sarah and Emma's graves on a cold November morning. Maya had placed flowers, pink roses because girls like pink, and asked innocent questions about heaven that broke and healed James in equal measure. Do you think they can see us? Maya asked, standing between the 2 headstones. I hope so, James said quietly. Then they know you're not sad anymore. That's good. Nobody should be sad forever. Nicole watched James kneel beside Maya, watched him trace his fingers over his daughter's name carved in granite, watched him choose love over grief for the 1,000th time. That's when she knew, completely, certainly, without any remaining doubt. This man wasn't leaving. This wasn't temporary. This was real. 3 weeks before Christmas, James took Maya on a secret mission. They returned 4 hours later, both grinning like co-conspirators, both refusing to tell Nicole anything except that she'd find out soon. The proposal happened on a Saturday afternoon in the apartment, the space that had become home for all of them. James had spent more nights on the couch than in his sterile penthouse. His clothes were in Nicole's closet, his toothbrush in the bathroom, his heart completely, irrevocably intertwined with theirs. Nicole came home from a rare solo shopping trip to find the living room transformed. Candles everywhere, safe electric ones because Maya was 5 and curious. Flowers, white roses this time, Sarah's favorite. James had told Nicole that detail weeks ago, wanted her to know that honoring his past was part of how he loved his future. Maya sat on the couch in her favorite purple dress, practically vibrating with excitement. Mommy, sit down. We have something very, very important to ask you. Nicole's heart started racing. Maya, what? James emerged from the kitchen, wearing the navy suit Nicole loved, his hands trembling slightly. For a man who presented a Fortune 500 boards without breaking a sweat, he looked terrified. Nicole, he started, then laughed nervously. I had a whole speech planned, memorized it, but looking at you right now, I can't remember a single word. Maya giggled. You're supposed to tell her she's beautiful first. Right. Thank you, sweetheart. James smiled, his eyes never leaving Nicole's face. You're beautiful, not just today, every day. Even at 6 a.m. when you're rushing to work with coffee spilled on your scrubs. Even when you're crying over medical bills that don't exist anymore. Even when you're being stubborn about accepting help. James, Nicole whispered, tears already forming. I died 2 years ago. James continued, his voice thick with emotion. Not literally, but in every way that mattered. And then a little girl with butterfly clips asked if she could sit with me. And her mother looked at me with understanding instead of pity, and I remembered what it felt like to be alive. He moved closer, took her hands. You didn't fix me. I'm still broken in some places. I still miss Sarah and Emma every single day. But you taught me that broken doesn't mean finished. That hearts can hold grief and joy simultaneously. That love doesn't replace love, it multiplies it. Maya bounced on the couch. This is a good part, Mommy. James laughed through his tears and knelt on one knee. From his pocket, he pulled a small velvet box, but before he could open it, Maya jumped up and grabbed it from his hands. I get to do this part, she announced. We practiced. Nicole was crying now, full tears streaming down her face as her daughter, her miracle, her beautiful, breathing easy daughter, opened the ring box with all the ceremony a 5-year-old could muster. Mommy, Maya said solemnly, Mr. James wants to marry you. And I said yes for me. But you have to say yes for you. Do you want to marry him? Because I really, really do. He reads the best bedtime stories, and he lets me put stickers on his fancy car. And he looks at you like you're the most special person in the whole world. She's very wise, James added softly. Gets it from her mother. Nicole looked at the ring, a simple platinum band with a single diamond, elegant and understated and perfect. She looked at James, this man who'd shown up in her darkest hour and stayed. She looked at Maya, healthy and happy and hoping. I'm terrified, Nicole admitted. What if something goes wrong? What if everything goes right? James countered gently. What if we get 50 years together? What if we grow old watching Maya grow up? What if we build something beautiful from all this broken? What if you leave? I won't. What if I'm not enough? You're everything. Maya tugged on her mother's sleeve. Mommy, say yes. Please say yes. I want Mr. James to be my real daddy. And Nicole, who'd been abandoned and betrayed and left to fight alone, who'd learned that survival meant trusting no one but herself, made the bravest choice of her life. She chose to trust again. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. Maya cheered. James slipped the ring on Nicole's finger with shaking hands. And when he kissed her, it tasted like promises and second chances, and the kind of love that survives anything. There's one more thing, James said when they finally pulled apart. He looked at Maya. We talked about this, remember? Maya nodded seriously and climbed into James's lap. Mr. James wants to adopt me. That means he'll be my daddy for real, not just for pretend. And I'll be Maya Mitchell instead of Maya Thompson. Is that okay, Mommy? Nicole couldn't speak, could only nod as sobs overtook her. I know Marcus is her biological father, James said quietly. And if he ever comes back, if he ever wants to be part of her life, we'll handle that. But I want to be her father in every way that matters. Legally, permanently. I want to be the one who walks her down the aisle someday, who teaches her to drive, who threatens her first boyfriend. You better believe I'll threaten him, Maya agreed, making them both laugh through their tears. Are you sure? Nicole asked. It's a huge commitment. She's a lot. She's perfect, James said firmly. And she's already my daughter in my heart. This just makes it official. Nicole pulled them both into a hug. This man and this child who become her entire world, and felt the last piece of her broken heart click back into place. The wedding happened on a February morning, cold but clear, in a small chapel with stained glass windows that painted rainbow light across the wooden pews. 27 people attended. James's board members, a few longtime friends, Nicole's colleagues from the hospital, Mrs. Chun, Maya's preschool teacher, and in the front row, 2 empty seats with white roses, reserved for Sarah and Emma. Nicole wore a simple cream dress. Maya wore purple, because of course she did, with her butterfly clips and a flower crown, and the biggest smile anyone had ever seen. When the officiant asked if anyone objected, Maya raised her hand. The whole chapel held its breath. I object to waiting any longer, she announced. Can they kiss now? I'm hungry. Laughter broke the tension. James grinned at Nicole, who was trying not to laugh during her own wedding. I love you, he whispered. I love you too, she whispered back. I now pronounce you husband and wife, the officiant said, smiling. You may kiss your bride. And in a chapel filled with people who'd watched them heal, James Mitchell kissed Nicole Mitchell and chose joy over grief, hope over despair, love over loneliness. Maya cheered loudest of all. The adoption papers were finalized 3 weeks later in a judge's chamber. Maya wore her purple dress again, declared it her special occasion dress. She sat between James and Nicole, swinging her feet that didn't quite touch the floor, as the judge explained what adoption meant. Do you understand that Mr. Mitchell will be your legal father? The judge asked kindly. Yes, Maya said. He'll be my daddy forever and ever. Right, Daddy? The first time she said it. The first time she called him Daddy, without the Mr. James qualifier. James's composure cracked completely. He lifted Maya into his lap and buried his face in her hair, shoulders shaking with sobs he couldn't contain. Forever and ever, he managed. I promise. The judge, a grandmother of 8 who'd seen 1,000 adoptions, dabbed at her own eyes. Well, I think that settles it. Maya Thompson, meet Maya Mitchell. Nicole signed papers with tears streaming down her face. James signed with Maya in his lap. And just like that, they were a family. Legal, official, permanent. In the courthouse parking lot, Maya had a question. Daddy, do I have 2 daddies now? Marcus who left and you stayed? James knelt to her level. This child who'd saved his life was a simple question 6 months ago. Biologically, yes, but being a father isn't about biology, sweetheart. It's about showing up, loving, choosing to stay even when things are hard. So you're my real daddy. If you'll have me, forever and ever, Maya repeated, and hugged him with all the strength in her 5-year-old body. 3 months later, on a rainy April afternoon that felt like destiny, James suggested they visit Morrison's coffee house. They hadn't been back since that first encounter. The place held too much meaning, too much weight. But Nicole agreed, sensing James needed this. The coffee shop looked exactly the same. Same tables. Same corner where James had sat alone in his grief. Same windows were arranged streaked in familiar patterns. Can we sit where we sat before? Maya asked, healthy and vibrant, and so different from the struggling child who'd asked permission to sit down. Absolutely, James said. They ordered coffee for the adults, hot chocolate for Maya, settled into that corner table. And Maya, with the wisdom of children who understand things adults forget, noticed something. An old man sat alone 3 tables away. He wasn't drinking his coffee, just staring at nothing, his eyes hollow in a way Maya recognized. He looks sad, she whispered to James, like you used to look. James followed her gaze and saw himself from 7 months ago. The emptiness, the just barely holding on, the man-shaped hole where a person used to be. Yes, he agreed quietly. He does. Maya slipped out of her chair before Nicole could stop her. She walked to the old man's table, her purple sneakers squeaking slightly on the floor. Excuse me, mister. The old man looked up, startled. Can I sit here? Maya asked, pointing to the empty chair. You look lonely, and my daddy says nobody should have to be lonely. The old man's eyes filled with tears. Yes. Yes, you can sit. Maya climbed into the chair and folded her hands on the table, exactly like she'd done with James all those months ago. I'm Maya Mitchell. I'm 5 1/4. What's your name? James and Nicole watching their table as their daughter, their miracle, their gift, passed on the kindness that saved them all. The old man started talking, hesitant at first, then more freely. Maya listened with the same attentiveness she'd shown James, the same open-hearted compassion that had cracked his grief wide open. She's amazing, Nicole whispered. She learned from the best, James replied, squeezing her hand. After 10 minutes, Maya returned to their table, mission accomplished. He's sad because his wife died, she reported matter-of-factly. I told him that being sad is okay, and that my daddy was really sad too, but then he met us and now he smiles all the time. I gave him our phone number in case he needs a friend. James laughed, incredulous. You gave him my phone number? Yep. You help sad people, Daddy. That's what you do. And she was right. Somewhere between a rainy October afternoon and an April morning full of second chances, James Mitchell had transformed from a man drowning in grief to someone who could offer hope to others, all because a little girl asked if she could sit down. That night, back in the apartment that had become home, James stood in Maya's doorway watching Nicole read bedtime stories. All 23 stuffed animals were lined up for goodnight kisses. Peanut and his brother got extra attention. When Maya finally fell asleep, James pulled out his phone and looked at a photo he'd taken that day. The 3 of them at the coffee shop, Maya between her parents, all of them smiling. He sent it to his phone's photo album titled Family, where it joined hundreds of pictures of Sarah and Emma, 2 families, both loved, both cherished, both forever part of who he was. Grief hadn't ended. He still missed his first wife and daughter, still visited their graves, still had moments where the loss felt unbearable. But love had expanded to hold it all, the grief and the joy, the past and the present, the daughter he'd lost and the daughter he'd gained, the wife who died and the wife who'd shown him how to live again. Nicole found him on the balcony, looking out at the city lights. You okay? She asked, slipping her arms around his waist. Better than okay, James said honestly. I was just thinking about how I ended up here. How much had to break for this to happen? How Sarah and Emma's death led me to that coffee shop, to Maya, to you. Do you think they'd approve? I think they'd love you. Both of you. James turned to face her. I think they'd be glad I found happiness again, that I chose life over grief. We chose life, Nicole corrected. All 3 of us. We chose each other. They stood on the balcony, husband and wife, parents to a miracle child, 2 broken people who'd built something whole from the pieces of their shattered lives. Inside, Maya slept peacefully, her breathing easy and unlabored, dreaming whatever 5-year-olds dream about. Her 2 stuffed elephants guarded her pillow. Her purple dress hung in the closet, ready for the next special occasion. And in a coffee shop across town, an old man sat with a phone number in his pocket, and the first spark of hope he'd felt in months. All because a little girl with butterfly clips had asked if she could sit down. Kindness ripples outward like that. One act of compassion, one moment of connection, one question asked at exactly the right time. Can I sit here? For simple words that changed everything. Has a stranger's kindness ever changed your life? Or have you been that stranger for someone else? We'd love to hear your story. Share it in the comments below and let us know where you're watching from. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Because we're all just looking for permission to sit down, to be seen, to be loved despite our broken places. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, someone says yes.